Our scroll of destiny is how God has made us, and how that relates to outworking his purposes in line with our identity. It's not a prophetic statement, and it's not a list of things that are going to happen in our lives. It's more of an outline of the things that are agreed with God and our spirit for the outworking of with his purposes, really. So does he have a person for us? Well, I think that's for us to discover and seek him about. I don't think he's going to have a one person and that's it, in the way that you're thinking according to a scroll. And I think things like spouses and other issues like that, okay, there are many Christians who have got married and unfortunately have been divorced. Or what happens to them? Is that in their scroll of destiny, not in their scroll of destiny? If you look at it as almost like a fate statement, then it will be that way, but I don't see it that way. So when it comes to a spouse, I would be seeking God, asking God, and maybe decreeing and declaring that the person who would be best suited to me would be drawn to me or connect to me via frequency or whatever it might be. If I had somebody that I thought I'd fallen in love with and I wanted to get married, I would check that out, of course, with the Father and ask his view on that. But a lot of the times, I'm sure the things he would say, as he does lots of times to me, is, well, it's up to you. You know, these covenants we make, earthly covenants, are up to us. I don't think they're fixed and rigid in the way that some people would say on a scroll. And I've heard people talk about a scroll of destiny as, you know, an agreement with all the terrible bad things that happen in our lives. So, you know, before we came here, we agreed that we would have this and terrible abuse. We didn't. God has none of that for us. Those are the things that happen on earth as a result of the sort of fallen dimension we live in and people's choices. So, you know, you could pray, seek God for a spouse, find someone that God was okay with, and then they still could end up breaking that covenant in the future, because you can't force someone to make the right choices. You know, hence, I think these things are best done in relationship with God, but not seen as fixed and rigid in that way. You know, otherwise, the scroll of destiny type thing becomes a very, almost like, well, this is what's going to happen, therefore it will happen anyway, you know, and that's not really what it's about. It's more aligned to a relational perspective of us outworking God's heart and purpose as he created us to be, and therefore outwork in relationship with him, and certainly not in any fixed, rigid way that there's a list of instructions there for us to fulfill, because that removes our creative sonship out of it, and it also removes our agreement out of it, because there's power in agreement, and I have to come into agreement, even though my spirit may have, in an eternal sense, engaged with God and had that destiny assigned to it with agreement. I still have to agree as spirit, soul, and body, you know, and that requires choice, and choice is what's aligned to worship, and worship is obedience. So, of course, I want to choose to do the things that are best aligned to the purposes of God in accordance to my life, and choose to do those things out of my desire, but they're not fixed. And if I didn't choose to do something, God has the ability to rewrite my scroll to enable me to fulfill my scroll, because that's what his purpose is. He wants the best for us. He wants to bring good out of everything. So I've made lots of bad choices in my life. Did that mean that I was therefore not fulfilling my destiny? Well, you could look at it in that terms, but also you could look at it in terms of, well, God knows. And when we make a choice that isn't aligned to his best for us, he will work good into that to bring it into alignment with God's best for us. And therefore things get rewritten. And I don't think the scroll is a fixed and rigid thing. It can be rewritten. No, of course, I don't want to make choices which are not in alignment with God's will. But sometimes I might, but for some people in a religious setting, that would be horrendous. Oh no, I've missed out. I'm going to be punished, or I'm going to miss out on this and that. I won't get my rewards. And there's all the negative attached to not fulfilling something, which is more a religious concept than anything that God has. God has no negative things to give us. So he's not going to punish us in that way, So we need to come into a deeper relationship with God, really knows his heart, and then just daily choose to walk with him and outwork it, and then we'll see our destiny will be fulfilled. But if you have a whole scroll that you want to read so you can then outwork it, the temptation is it could become very legalistic, and it could actually produce fear in people if they're not able to do it for any reason. So it's much more relational than originally I thought and what I'd heard taught about. And subsequently I've heard a lot of teaching on it that I would definitely not agree with. And certainly the teaching that on your scroll you agreed for abuse and suffering and this, you didn't. That is never God's intention, and never has been God's intention. Hi everyone, we're starting a Patreon page, patreon.com/freedomarc, and we would like to invite you to partner with us in taking the message of God's unconditional love, limitless grace, triumphant mercy to a bigger global audience.